Okay, take three. Welcome to another episode of the Ghost Countries podcast. Yeah, there's going to be some outtakes at the end of this one. As
Yeah,
always,
wait for it.
yeah. As always, I'm joined by my co-host over in Germany, Geist.
Hey,
And today we're going to be covering not a ghost country, but a ghost colony, that of Klein Venedig. And this very much relates to, well, Germany. But for those of you who didn't see the episode, up there or down in the description, there should be a card or a link. And yeah, why don't you open it up, Geist?
yeah, so the ghost colony of Klein Venedig was basically what nowadays is Venezuela, or at the border between Venezuela and Colombia, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, it was basically the only colony on South American ground, to my knowledge. Uh, or maybe later there might have been some, I don't know. But at least in that period, definitely the only one. And also just possible due to the circumstances in which the world was in that time. I mean, obviously that's always like that. But let's say centuries later or earlier, that's the same stuff wouldn't have been possible. And it was basically just possible because Charles V, the Emperor of Germany, um, had was also in a personal union with Spain, um, and therefore had vast overseas territories. And I think that's a really interesting thing because when you would just think about Germany, you would like, how can they colonize other? I mean, the Americas. That's not possible because they're not landlocked or whatever, but they are very far away from the Atlantic Ocean. Um,
Well,
and yeah, they were if there wasn't Charles V. So I think that's really interesting. Also, the with the Welser and the Fugger,
mm,
these two families basically. But I mean, I can't say that I'm happy about how the Germans handled this. I mean, with the adjectives given to the Germans, how they treated the indigenous. I mean, that came to me totally as a surprise. I never heard that Germany was treating other peoples very badly. Um, yeah,
well,
it was just the usual thing. Like whenever we get in contact with other peoples, we behave horribly.
well. One thing I wanted to bring up was you said there wasn't really like a. Well, okay. I wanted to say what I thought was interesting about Klein Venedig was I think there's actually a lot of parallels with how the German colonial empire in Africa came to be. Because as you mentioned here, this wasn't, I mean, it was state sanctioned, but it wasn't officially like, a German colony per se. It was that of that wealthy merchant family, the Wessar.
Right, so,
Yeah.
right, so.
So, in many ways, that's kind of similar with what happened, at least in parts of Africa, with the German colonial venture over there. Because, like in what it was German Southwest Africa, nowadays Namibia, you had, I'm blanking on his name now, but Luderitz, I think that's his name, who kind of went over there and established his own little colonial venture, not with the official sanctioning of the German state, at least not in the way that you saw other European countries go about colonization of Africa and Asia. And in a lot of ways, it was these actions of individuals and merchant entities like, oh, I'm blanking on the name of them now, and that's really going to bother me. But the merchant group that had a very strong vested interest in what is nowadays Cameroon, a German merchant group. It's interesting to see how these individuals or organizations, private individuals and private organizations, admittedly with state connections, basically forced Germany into colonial adventurism in Africa during that period of time. And in many ways, it was kind of similar. Not exactly the same, but kind of similar here, where you had the merchant family, admittedly, with the backing of the state, going off and setting up their own little colonial enterprise in South America.
Yeah, yeah. That's like. I mean, I'm not familiar with how the other colonial empires worked. I mean, especially in the 19th century.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but
And
in this regard, it's definitely very similar.
well, and to be fair, I mean, you can look at the British East India Company and others. It's not to
Yeah,
say
yeah.
it was always like the state officially came in and conquered and made it a colony. Yes, there are instances of that, but there also were these, you know, quasi uh private groups that went in and established well, the first, vestiges of a colony in those territories before the state later came along and made it usually an official colonial possession. And I don't know, it was interesting to see the parallels with what happened in, again, Germany's colonial empire in Africa and Klein Venedig, at least from my perspective.
That's definitely a thing. But like it's like for me also the name was
Oh, New Venice?
very interesting. Yeah, I mean,
Or Little
yeah,
Venice,
basically,
excuse me, Little
yeah,
Venice.
exactly, Little Venice. Um, because like I mean, everybody knows Venezuela and everybody knows Venice, and them. I remember when I was small, sometimes I was mistaking those two,
Mm.
um, and to then later find out, yeah, it actually comes from the same name, um, and the German translation of it is exactly Little Venice. Is yeah, really interesting. And also, I kind of would have liked to see what he saw there, which was like, oh, that looks like Venice. Um,
Well, that was based upon like how the native peoples lived, not all of them, but at least in certain areas of what is nowadays Colombia and Venezuela, lived in these like stilt houses, right? They were above the various rivers and wetlands that would flood with seasonal variation stuff.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm not exactly sure if that was seasonal floodings or whatever, but they
Hmm.
were definitely living above the water,
Okay.
um, and therefore very interesting. But also that might, I mean, I'll be honest, that must have been horrible in terms of mosquitoes and stuff.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. I mean, like South America and plenty of other parts of the world in that regards. Yeah. I can only imagine, actually, speaking of how abusive or hostile the environment was to, well, just people in general. I mean, look at all the various expeditions, including by some of the, colonial governors of Klein Venedig in search for El Dorado and other riches and mysteries deep within the, rainforests of South America. But, they took massive losses, not just because of attacks by, hostile native peoples and stuff like that, but you had disease, starvation, natural disasters, and all this stuff. This was definitely a tough place to be.
Yeah, like I I think I told you this in privacy already, but the other day I was listening to a podcast and they were actually talking about a case where I was like, "Damn, I would have never done that." I love it when people say that, and actually they would.
Hmm.
But there was a scam basically in the 19th century, I think it was,
Okay.
where it was like a Scottish guy, and he basically made up a country and was like promising wealthy uh, other Scots, I think,
Hmm.
and British, and was like, yeah, there's that land there. It's really fantastic. Here, I got some paintings from over there, and really made up the whole story. And was organizing a trip there, and they had to pay a massive amount of money. There will be nowadays some hundreds of millions of dollars.
Hmm.
Um, and basically, they traveled there. Uh, and the thing why I was actually surprised is the name, because the name of the country was Mosquito Shore.
Is that Mosquito Shore? Is that the Mosquito Coast in what is like nowadays Honduras?
No, it's actually a different one because
Really?
I looked it up as well,
Okay.
but that was a different story. I have to. I probably like say that in the next podcast where that
Hmm.
is actually coming from. But there was definitely not a real thing. It was just invented. But so actually the whole story was invented. He brought them there, was like, oh yeah, here go with your small boats because you gotta travel inland for a while.
Hmm.
They did, and then they found out, yeah, there is actually nothing but forest here. And
Oh my gosh.
one thing was true about the mosquito coast: it was full with mosquitoes.
Wow.
Uh,
I'm actually not familiar with this story, and that's I mean, aside from what you've told me, here and before, and it's just like, yeah, that's pretty horrible. That's a real big con job.
and basically all of them died.
Yeah, I would imagine. I mean, if you're stranded in a
Um,
hostile territory halfway around the world or something.
I don't know how many people that was though. I think it was like 200 or something like that. Um, so yeah, really a horrible thing. But my biggest question was, who would emigrate to a country whose name is Mosquito Shore? I mean, that would be definitely the last country where I'd like to emigrate or whatever.
Well, isn't that why they did a little bit of rebranding with Greenland? Greenland and Iceland. We want to make Greenland sound a little more enticing to potential settlers and stuff, not just frozen, barren Greenland. But
Yeah, it might have been.
well, and also, I mean, just kind of joking there a little bit, but also just speaking about, in search for something that doesn't exist, El Dorado, and quite a lot of legends about, hidden treasures deep within the rainforest. That played a very pivotal role in, well, Klein Venedik's history. So I guess my question to you is, what do you think about that? Because, like, as we did mention in episode, there is a lot of circumstantial evidence out there to suggest there were cities of sorts deep within the Amazon. Now, were these the cities of gold talked about in those, legendary reports or records? No. I mean, for the most part, probably not. But still, there was an active, thriving civilization deep within the Amazon, which now is lost to time at various points in time. But so there was something. The legends did have a kernel of truth within them, but I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a. I mean, that's if I knew the answer, then probably.
Well, yeah, if we knew where there was a city of gold,
I mean, of course, I wouldn't do anything. I would just leave the city as a cultural heritage.
ah.
But there might have been other people who. I mean, I'm not that. I don't care about money. Okay, jokes aside. No. Um, uh, yeah, I mean, the El Dorado story is actually always interesting. There were 7 El Dorados, I think. I mean, it was always called the 7 cities of gold, I think.
Hmm.
So I think at the end they didn't find one. They found one in One Piece, though. Uh,
Well, don't
in One
forget the
Piece,
Disney
it's
movie.
up in the sky.
And don't forget, sorry, I said Disney. That wasn't a Disney movie, but the El Dorado animated film.
There it was behind a waterfall or something, right?
Yep.
Was it? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that might have been fake news. So don't trust my word here.
No, but
No,
the point you're getting to, and I just want to say this quickly, is there were a lot of legends talking about hidden cities within the Amazon. And another one of these was brought to our attention by a viewer who left a comment, and we had a little bit of a discussion about something known as Manuscript 512 or 512, which describes a lost city somewhere within Bahia, the state of Bahia, what's now Bahia, a province in Brazil. So, and this inspired a lot of people to go out in search, including that famous explorer who was in search of the lost city of Z or Zed. At least this was part of,
also the founder of the Z flag.
But yeah, see, it's all connected again. But no, I mean, the point is there were a lot of people out there searching for wealth and lost civilizations, hidden treasure. It was, it's interesting. And it played such a pivotal role because a lot of the people involved with Klein Venedig, I gotta say, they didn't seem really that interested in making a profitable colony here. It was kind of like, let's just use this as springboard for our own personal adventures in South America.
Yeah. Yeah. So I kind of feel like there might have been some really wealthy cities, but cities entirely built of gold.
Hmm.
That sounds a little too much like out of a fairy tale. I mean, fairy tales can come true, that's true. But I guess it's probably a story where there was a very rich city also among the like some legends of the natives,
Mm,
that there were some, because there were previous empires and stuff which were very wealthy,
sure.
but then disappeared. And I can imagine that those stories were like, yeah, like going on among the tribes and stuff, that they were telling themselves, yeah, once there was a very wealthy city, and then over time became a city of gold. And that's why the people went crazy for the city of gold. At least I can imagine it being like this.
Oh yeah, and I
Um,
mean, again, going into that collective history, or no, I don't know what the term is I want to use here, but like there's a collective memory. There we go. Like I'm sure there was something that inspired the actual basis, but over time it became embellished and changed into, El Dorado, the city of gold. Just like, okay, this is completely random and off topic. And I hate myself for not remembering the name of this specific South American cryptid. I'm going to put it on screen when I do editing. But there's these stories of like this big, lumbering, hairy kind of like monster with like claws and a stomach in its mouth in parts of sorry, I said a stomach in its mouth, a mouth where its stomach should be, in the Amazonian rainforest. And what's interesting is some people, cryptozoologists and others, theorized that the basis for these legends was the actual gigantic land sloth, which was a real animal that went extinct over time. Maybe there was, interaction with peoples at various points in times, and this gave rise to the legends. Just like there's people who think that, the discovery of dinosaur fossils gave rise to the legends of dragons and other mythical beasts in Europe and other parts of the world. So, what I'm just trying to say is, I think maybe deep, deep down in the collective memory, there's some nugget of truth. But over time, it became this embellished, fantastical, non real thing.
yeah, yeah, like these kind of things are actually really interesting to actually look at the roots of legends and stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, and sometimes I would just like, it would be cool to know the truth, but who knows? The other day I was actually reading an article that they might have found out that. Now, don't ask me about the exact incidents, but there was a story in the Bible, um, where was that Sodom and Gomorrah, where the one city was basically
Mm-hmm.
wiped
Destroyed.
out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, uh, I heard that that may have been an asteroid,
Ah, yeah.
which basically crashed on Earth in that time. Um, so I mean, these are speculations, but I was reading that there are some hints about this, that there might have been such a crash exactly during the time mentioned, which would also explain maybe why that one woman who turned around was basically. I mean, they said that she was.
Turned into
Uh,
like a pillar of salt.
yeah, and that might have been like, I don't know, maybe like lost her eyesight or whatever because she turned around, or something like this because the light.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, these are all speculations, but I think these speculations are very interesting always.
Oh, no, of course.
Um,
Of course. And I mean, like, another good example of that is the volcanic eruption on Santorini may have been the basis for, and the ensuing destruction of Minoan civilization may have been what gave rise to, the tales of Atlantis. There's a lot of interesting things, and yeah, I think they're interesting, but it's just unique in a way how it played such a central role to the. I I don't want to say that, well, the founding in part, but definitely the sustaining of Klein Venedig, this ghost colony. I mean, because like we mentioned in episode, the governors and various other colonial officials, they really didn't seem to care about developing anything profitable here. I mean, in terms of long-term sustainability, it was all about get as much wealth out of it as quickly as you can, maybe use it as a launch board for these expeditions, and that was good enough for them.
yeah,
And to your point, what you mentioned earlier, that type of thinking definitely played a role in how they treated the indigenous peoples of the region. Very similar, I think you could make the argument to like another ghost colony, the Belgian Free State, Congo, and how King Leopold, treated the various people of that region as like nothing more than well, slave labor in essence to, get rubber wealth and other things from the region. They were extremely cruel. And I think you could say the same essentially was going on here in a way.
Yeah,
Similarities,
yeah,
at least, similarities.
yeah, yeah, definitely. So yeah, very interesting stories. All those legends. Once I remember I possessed a game, um, Hegemony, I think it was,
Okay.
um, and it was basically the conquest of Greece. Yeah, you were Philip II, basically, of Macedon. And the thing which actually I thought was really cool is there were so many. You were basically going around the map of Greece, and they had just at random points grave of who I mean some famous Greek people, or um, where there was like, yeah, the first task of Hercules was done here and stuff. And I thought, wow, that's so cool. Do these places really exist? Because uh, all these stories from fairy tales and stuff, just to go there and to imagine it, there might have happened something. Probably not what they tell us, but at least something. Or to imagine this legend again being there. I think that's really fascinating.
Hmm.
Um, oh, and yeah, I basically found what I was talking about. Um, so the name of that man,
Ah, okay.
that scammer, was
Yeah.
Gregor McGregor, which sounds a lot like a scam name,
Gregor McGregor. Yeah.
if you ask me. By the way, Mac meaning son of.
Mm.
So Gregor, the son of Gregor, really. Um, and that was definitely in the Bay of Honduras nowadays,
Oh, so
and that was the Mosquito Coast.
okay,
The
there we go.
country where they were traveling was, I think, nameless, or he was calling it Poye or
Mm.
something like this. So I misunderstood something in that story, but yeah, and it seems like there were three survivors. I was just
Oh,
seeing this.
that is interesting though. Okay, because I know of the Mosquito Coast at least a little bit, and I mean whenever you search it up online, you'll find like some random movie called the Mosquito Coast, I think, not the actual, territory. But no, that's interesting. That's actually really interesting. I think we might have to look into that someday.
Yeah, that it
So,
might be like we do a ghost biography about the biggest scammer
yeah.
of all times.
Yeah, and it's tied into kind of a yeah, that's interesting. That's really interesting. So, okay. I don't know. Anything else you want to touch upon before we hit like how the Ghost Colony came to an end? Because its ending was kind of I don't know. It was I
It,
guess
it,
it
it, was- let's say how it actually honestly felt like. It felt like there was an open ending for season one, and then actually they were like, "Nah, it won't get a season two."
yeah, no, it,
Uh,
it, it was very sudden. It was just boom, it's done. And I mean there
yeah,
were reasons boom it was done. When you go back to the Holy Roman Emperor, it was like wait, he was emperor, right? I'm not crazy. What am I saying? But
Charles. Yeah,
yeah, the colony was unprofitable. It was basically a failure. It had internal instability, constant issues. I mean, if you're looking at it in terms of just a cold, calculated investment, there was no reason why the host country was going to continue this venture, even though it was kind of in that weird semi, private category. But still, you can understand why the rug was pulled out from under them.
yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, it was not a self-sustaining colony at all. It was not even getting close to it. Um, so yeah, it was definitely not very profitable. And whenever there was the first possibility, basically, yeah,
Well, also, there was really no German presence to be said. I mean, I know they tried and they got some people to come, but, the colony was pretty much made up of people from Spain and the indigenous peoples, and the German
yeah. And
colonial
even
presence.
even the Spanish were not happy with how that went.
Oh, well,
So
yeah. I mean, they were like the German colonial elite were not looked upon favorably by pretty much anyone, I think.
yeah, but it was like for me that whole map was also like, yeah, from one coast to the other. Yeah, okay, thanks.
Yeah, that was a pretty big claim. Pretty big territorial claim.
Yeah, there's like, okay, man. Because like I think they had no idea how far deep south it actually still went.
No,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, and I was just thinking, yeah, and that's really annoying. There was that one priest
Ah, yeah.
that, and I forgot his name. For goodness sake, I like studied him in my undergrad so much, and right now I forgot his name. Very influential monk, basically, who was fighting for the rights of the indigenous.
Hmm.
Um, I know we mentioned him in the video.
Mm-hmm.
I remember him being there.
He'll be on screen.
And I all the time had in my head Bernal Diaz del Castillo, but that's not him. That was a conquistador. Totally wrong. But like, I really forgot his name. But even he criticized directly Klein Venedig, and I
Mm.
think this gives you a clear hint. I mean, if he pointed out such a small colony as basically it actually was, that gives you a clear idea. And he was actually criticizing him the much harsher way than many other colonial nations.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, Klein Venedig was interesting, but I think the writing was kind of on the wall that this was not going to be a long-term project. It was basically, well, like I said, the colonial officials used it as a launch board for expeditions and other ways to personally enrich themselves. And they really didn't give any reason for the project to continue long term. And because of how they ruled, because of their cruelty, because of mismanagement, a whole host of factors, you could just lump them all together like we did in episode. Yeah, they didn't get a renewal, so season 2 did not happen.
Yeah. So yeah, it's more or less what it
Yeah,
actually was. Like,
yeah. No, it's a pretty sudden ending, but that's how it was. But nonetheless, I think it was very interesting because though the history is basically forgotten nowadays, it still is part of Venezuela's story and to a degree Colombia's story, not to mention South America as a whole.
mm-hmm.
And you know, I think it's important history that should be remembered. Even if it's a failed colony, it's still left an impact in a few ways. But like I said, even though Spanish influence definitely did supersede it in time.
Yeah.
So
Sorry, I just can't forget that I was thinking about that one. That, man, that's impossible. Like, I know that as soon as we start the podcast, I was like, oh, it was him. But yeah,
well, on that note, I guess that's how we'll end this podcast. Not our longest one, but still, you know, if you guys haven't done so, check out the episode. If you have any more suggestions for ghost countries in South America, I know I say this pretty much at the end of every podcast. Just let us know down in the comments below. We've got some planned already, so don't worry, but always open to suggestions. We've had some pretty good ones recommended by viewers as of late. And
Bartolome de las Casas.
oh, there we go. Great note to end on.
Right now, finally, I was like, Casas? Like, oh yeah, de las Casas. Okay, yeah.
It's a perfect note to wrap things up. So anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed it. And you know, if you haven't done so, subscribe, like this video, leave a comment, and we'll see you again next time.
And enjoy the outtake.
Yeah, exactly.
Bye.
Bye for now. Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of, well, the Ghost Countries podcast. I'm joined by my co-host over in Germany, as always, Geist.
Hey.
And today we're going to be covering not a ghost country, but a ghost colony that very much relates to Germany, Klein Venedig. So, yeah, do you want to open it up, Manuel? Oh, dang it.
Hello guys.
Hey guys, and welcome to another Ghost Countries podcast. As always, I'm joined by my co-host over in Germany, Geist.
Hello.
And today we're going to be talking about, well, something that relates very much to you in Germany, the ghost colony of Klein Venedig. You know,
I just can't. Okay, Klein Venedig. Um,
I don't know. Should we keep this recording?
no.